the Dark, Episode 2. On this podcast, we talk about horror movies. I'm Neil.
I'm Joey.
And the movie I chose today is Creep. And we're going to get into that in a couple of minutes. But the first thing I wanted to do is, just because last episode we didn't really introduce the podcast, I wanted to do that this time around. On this podcast, as I said, we're talking about horror movies. And on the first episode, we put it as horror and horror-related movies. But I'm changing it to horror because, well, the initial intent was that we would talk about movies that were traditionally considered to be horror, that more easily fit into the genre, and also movies that are maybe a little bit more on the borderline, or perhaps some people wouldn't consider them horror, they'd consider them psychological thrillers or something else. But I think I gotta go with what's in my heart. Yeah. I gotta go with what I feel deep down inside. And what I feel is that if a movie is up for consideration for being a horror movie, if horror is on the table, then it can be talked about as a horror movie, or at least in the context of the horror genre. And so that's, I think, what I want to do. Like last episode, we did a movie, Nothing Bad Can Happen. It's a movie that is kind of a drama that gets into very dark territory that, to me, makes it kind of a horror movie, but not in a way that everyone would think
It's very debatable if that movie is actually a horror movie.
Yeah, it's kind of like, technically speaking, maybe not. It's kind of on the border, but we're talking about movies on this podcast that are in some way related to horror, and that's definitely.
I did enjoy talking about that movie, though.
Yeah,
that was a fun movie to analyze.
It was.
Hard movie to watch, fun movie to analyze. Welcome to A Bit of the Dark, people.
Yeah, I was thinking we could talk about just our history with the horror genre and what got us into horror and stuff like that. Personally, I have always had an affinity for horror, but when I was a kid, horror movies just scared me too much. They affected me in too visceral a way.
Baby.
I remember watching The Others as a kid. I don't remember how young I was, pretty young, but just being kind of riveted by it. Like I was really into it, and that's kind of how I was with scary movies. Is like, I'd be like, oh man, I really want to watch this. It's so cool. But I think that kind of put me off of horror movies. It made it so that I didn't really get that into them as a kid. But later on, I got older and they started to. I could handle them, and then but I think because of that kind of like initial thing, it took me a long time before I started to get more into the genre.
Yeah. I think we kind of come at it from opposite perspectives, listening to you. Mm-hmm. Because for lack of a better term, I got immunized to horror movies at a pretty young age. I somehow, as a little kid, managed to watch the Jeff Goldblum remake of The Fly, and I was way, way too young for that movie. I stopped watching out about the point where Jeff Goldblum's girlfriend, it's been years since I've seen that movie, I'm totally forgetting who was in it, but she has a nightmare that she's giving birth to a giant maggot.
Yep.
Yeah. That's when I'm like, okay, no more movie. That's just never sleep again for the rest of my life. But it didn't, surprisingly enough, it didn't work out that way. It ended up being that nothing else that I've pretty much ever seen on television since then has been able to scare me. You
were inoculated?
I was inoculated. It's kind of the old school polio vaccine. Or not polio, sorry, old school smallpox vaccine approach, where they cut your arm open and actually put some smallpox in there. If it doesn't kill you, then you're never going to get smallpox. That's basically what happened to me.
So what were some of the first horror movies that you got really into, where you were like, oh, like this is really cool, like, yeah.
Oh, that's easy. The original Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
Haven't really seen much of the sequels. Kind of tried to, but kind of couldn't really get into them. Love the original Halloween.
Yeah.
Loved Jaws. Didn't really scare me, but sorry to baby boomers. I know that movie traumatized your entire generation. But The Fly, once you've seen The Fly as a little kid, there's no going back. Silence of the Lambs. Absolutely cinematic masterpieces. That's really when I started to gain an appreciation for the genre.
Cool. So I think we can get into our talk about Creep now.
Yeah.
So I was thinking we could do a spoiler-free segment.
All right, spoiler-free on Creep.
So yeah, it's a 2014 movie written by Patrick Brice and Mark Duplass, and directed by Patrick Brice,
who are also the only two actors in the film.
Yeah, you don't see anyone else in this movie other than, I think, there's like one scene, but they're not actors even. I mean, it's just entirely a two-character piece, and so the protagonist is played by Patrick Brice, the director, and he's this guy who sees an ad on Craigslist, and this guy
mistake.
This guy wants someone to basically be a videographer because he's dying of cancer. And so he goes over to this guy's house, and so this guy is really weird right off the bat.
Yeah, when I first started watching this, I couldn't decide if the guy was creepy or just completely emotionally distraught from what he was going through, which would explain his erratic behavior, and I think that was intentional. That was probably Patrick Brice's intention with that character.
Yeah, and I should specify he basically wants someone to make a little kind of document of his life before he passes on.
Yeah, he wants to have he wants to leave behind an accurate representation of himself for his unborn son.
Right, who he calls Buddy.
Right.
And so yeah, the dude is very just gets right into his personal space and physically immediately, is very, very forward, is just extremely friendly in an unnerving way. What were your just kind of initial impressions with that character?
It's definitely what makes this movie scary. And this was a pretty scary movie. And that's coming from me, mind you. But what makes it scary is how slow it moves. Oh, right. I should mention that this is sort of a found footage film.
Yeah. It's kind of in the mock documentary format a little bit.
But they do a great job of explaining why it's found footage.
Right.
It's because he's been paid to film everything that happens.
Yeah, it's tied right into the premise.
Yeah, it's not like Cloverfield where why would you pick up the camera? The monster's right behind you. Just leave the camera. The camera is worthless. You're about to die, you idiots.
So many points when it's like, yeah, is this really worth your safety? Like preserving this footage? But
I'm sure it's been documented by every camera in New York, guys.
What keeps happening is this guy just keeps being really weird, and he keeps saying really creepy things, but the guy just kind of goes along with it because he, like you said, he's not sure if this guy is actually like possibly dangerous, or if he's just really lonely,
or if he's just
desperate.
Under extreme levels of emotion that are making him behave out of the ordinary.
Yeah, that he's unbalanced in some way, that he's got mental illness.
He's dying. It's pretty hard to be mentally stable with the knowledge that you've maybe got 3 months to live.
Right, he's like, maybe this guy's just in such an extreme place, that's why he's acting in an extreme way.
Yeah, and that does explain Aaron's behavior towards him.
So you like this movie?
Oh, I love this movie.
Yeah, okay, I really like it too.
Also appreciate how low budget it is.
Oh yeah, it's just so bare bones.
Yeah,
this movie shows what you can do with like practically nothing. Like you can do a horror movie like this and it can just with two characters, no special effects.
I don't even think the movie was shot in 1080p.
Yeah, yeah, and no, well, of course, no soundtrack. I mean, it's found footage.
Soundtrack wouldn't fit.
Yeah. Although there is good music at the beginning and end. There's like a cool song that's used. I think in the opening credits, and then there's like this weird song at the end, just like about this dude moaning about peach fuzz, like peach fuzz.
Oh God, peach fuzz. Why peach fuzz? Why?
Oh, the guy has this mask. He's
yeah,
got this
spoilers. Spoilers.
Oh, is that a spoiler? I
Well,
feel like that's pretty early. Is that
early?
It's like
on?
one of the early scenes.
Yeah, Peach Fuzz, the friendly wolf.
He's got this mask that he says it was his dad's mask, and his dad used to do this like dance with the mask, and he does the dance. Well, anyway, I think maybe at this point we can get into.
It's about time to get into spoilers.
Yeah.
Joseph is the man who hires Aaron on Craigslist. Or supposedly that's his name. We never really find out his actual name, but he probably 60% of everything he says is a lie. The Peach Fuzz thing felt strangely true to me.
That it was his dad's mask.
I kind of believe that. Yeah, it turns out that the woman he said was his wife is actually his sister. And he's not dying of cancer.
Yeah. You can't really tell with Joseph what stuff he's lying about and what stuff he's telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
He's such an actor. He's doing like a character kind of. It's like a character, but at the same time, I feel like this guy is genuinely desperate and for connection. I think he is actually lonely.
Yeah, and they do go more into that in the second movie.
Yes, they do. And that's our next episode.
Yeah,
We're going to be doing the next Creep movie.
If you enjoyed the first Creep movie, you will enjoy the second. He is a serial killer.
Yes.
Turns out everyone's worst fear about meeting someone on Craigslist, it's this guy.
The worst thing imaginable.
Normally the worst person you meet online turns out to be a neckbeard, but in this case, it's everyone's worst fear. It's a serial killer.
Yeah.
We're online. Are we serial killers? I don't think I'm a serial killer.
but
I'm like 90% sure I'm not a serial killer.
But
no,
sometimes you black out for long periods of time.
Every night there's this roughly 8-hour period that I have no memory of.
So, okay, Joseph, he wants to, like, get Aaron in touch with his inner Peach Fuzz. And he wants to show Aaron true...
Out of context, that sounds really funny.
He wants to show Aaron true fear, which he does by giving him, what, as he puts it, a near-death experience when they're out in the woods walking. And he goes off, he hides, and then he leaps out at him. And Aaron's terrified. And you don't see his reaction, and this is one of the things that I like about found footage movies, is that, like, in that scene, you're not seeing Aaron at all because he's holding the camera. You're just seeing Joseph as he's reacting. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize how much I scared you or whatever. That's one thing. How do you feel about found footage in general?
Great if done right.
Yeah, that's kind of how I am too, because like
awkward, really, really awkward if done wrong.
Yeah, it can easily just be a gimmick. But in this movie, in scenes like that, by not seeing his reaction, there's something kind of funny about that. He's after he does it, he's like, that was a near-death experience. It's incredible, right? It's really powerful. Joseph loves having near-death experiences, I think, and I think he wants to share that with him. This is like a weird way of, it's both like a sadistic way of toying with him and just like fucking around with him, but at the same time I feel like it also might be this weird way of him kind of like wanting to share something that he loves with somebody else.
Yeah, and killing people is almost his form of expressing intimacy with other human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they do get into that more in the second movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first movie definitely about Aaron. Second movie definitely more about Joseph's inner workings.
When Joseph sends Aaron the wolf mask and the knife, he says, and the tape, on the tape, he says, he says that wolves are animals that that love deeply but like kill the things they love or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like that's kind of like what Joseph is. It's like he kills the things he loves.
Yeah. Quite literally. Because he really does love Aaron. Purely platonically.
Yeah.
But he loves him more than pretty much anyone he's ever met.
He's his favorite.
He is his favorite person. He's more than his
Yeah.
favorite victim. He's his favorite person.
Because he's such a nice guy.
Yeah.
He's so trusting.
Mm-hmm. He doesn't expect... He never suspected that I would be trying to hurt him.
Yeah, he believed that I was a good person.
Yeah,
like
despite everything I did, I was a good person.
He put he did all these weird things, putting the axe for him to see. Just like constantly talking about death. He's talking about death so much, like sneaking up behind him and just saying like death, it's coming, and just all these things that he's just like, oh, this guy is he's just suffering.
Yeah, and then when Joseph, oh god, all the wolf mask scenes. Whenever he puts on that mask, it is surprisingly creepy. It's clearly like they just got it at Spirit Halloween or something,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not the mask that's scary. It's what it represents.
Uh-huh.
Oh man, masks. Yeah, that is kind of a well explored idea about masks, but it was done very subtly in this. I guess with every horror movie, you always have to talk about horror movie character logic. This one, there were some definite, obvious mistakes made, but not a lot. For the most part, I thought they were very understandable mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the character of Aaron. When he first meets Joseph, he sees him as someone dealing with very strong and complicated emotions. And maybe already a little mentally unstable, but definitely mentally unstable because of what's happening. He then finds out that nothing Joseph has told him is true, has that scary-ass interaction with him in the hallway, where he's dressed like the wolf and not letting him leave, and Aaron has to force his way out. Although Joseph totally let him go. Because Joseph is... He's a pretty good fighter when he has to be. So if he wanted to keep Aaron there and kill him then and there, he could have done it. But then, second half of the movie is all about Aaron receiving creepy things in the mail and having Joseph do creepy things around his house. And he does, to his credit, he does call the police, which most people in horror movies, for some reason, never seem to remember the police are a thing.
Yeah, you can do that.
But not Aaron. Aaron does the right thing in that regard. The one thing I would have just thinking, if somehow I had managed to get his first mistake was answering it out on, it was like going out to that guy's house on Craigslist, but he did offer him $1,000, so
Yeah.
people have done stupider things for $1,000. But aside from that, his first mistake, I think, was not getting out of that house.
He shouldn't have gone back to the house for a drink.
Well, okay, no, I meant Aaron's house. I mean, he definitely shouldn't have taken up Joseph on his offer to have a drink with him, but that's like saying you should never give in to peer pressure.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
people do that.
That's totally understandable.
That's a common thing that people do.
Yeah,
give in to a stronger personality, even when they know they're making a potentially dangerous mistake.
Yeah.
So I don't fault Aaron as a character for that. If anything, now I think about it, I don't really fault Aaron as a character at all, because he's well defined. Yeah, even though he's clearly, in a lot of ways, not always acting in his own best self-interest.
Right.
Well, the moment, because I'm thinking, if I had somehow got myself into that situation, I escaped the crazy Wolfman house, and I was at home, and I started getting creepy shit in the mail from him. First thing I'd do would be to get out of that house.
Yeah, go somewhere else. Go with a friend. Stay with a friend.
Or go get a hotel, set up security cameras. Well, it was 2014, so... Well, you could still get fairly cheap security cameras back then. Yeah, get a hotel.
Yeah.
Go to a friend's house. And then the second mistake he made, which, again, is a little understandable, is after being totally creeped out, he receives an apology DVD in the mail from Joseph, explaining what he did and that he wants to meet him in bright daylight in a relatively public area, not that public as it turns out. He goes to that meeting. He gets out of his car. He sits on a park bench and just stares out into the lake, waiting for Joseph to show up. Maybe that's probably why. Well, they actually do say that was why Aaron was Joseph's favorite victim. It's because most people either wouldn't have shown up, or if they did show up, would have not gotten far away from their car, and would have been looking around them constantly.
Yeah.
And if they did that, they probably wouldn't have gone alone. And Joseph does come, and he axes him in the back of the head. So I commend this movie on having the character's actions make sense from the character's perspective.
Yeah.
Not from a purely logical perspective, but who acts on pure logic.
Yeah, okay, so there's a scene where they're at Joseph's house after Joseph has invited Aaron back in for drinks. Joseph tells Aaron a story about his wife, supposedly. That's the story that he doesn't actually have a wife.
Yeah, we do find out that the story is fabricated.
Yeah. But it's a really creepy story and a really creepy scene. Definitely one of the most chilling scenes for me.
It's downright disturbing. I was actually kind of happy when I found out that incident was a lie.
Yeah.
Because I was hoping the movie wasn't going to go too far down that road. It's like, oh wait, no, that was bullshit.
All right, so in the story, it's like he finds out that his wife has been watching animal porn, and he confronts her about it. She denies it. He goes and buys a mask, the wolf mask, and then he comes back to their house, and then wearing the mask, he wakes her up, and then they have sex. And
well, he supposedly rapes her.
That's
right. But in his story, she's totally into that. Apparently, his wife had a furry rape fantasy.
Right.
Oh man, and Aaron is understandably just creeped out by that story. And then Joseph gets a little too drunk, and Aaron manages to steal his phone. Phone gets a call from Angela, who is supposedly Joseph's wife. Aaron picks up, and she has no idea what he's talking about.
But she catches on to the fact that, this is just some kind of a thing that Joseph has been spinning, and that Aaron is clearly...
Yeah, it turns out Angela is his sister.
So she knows at least that Aaron is dangerous. Who knows? But
Joseph is dangerous.
Oh, fuck, I keep getting mixed up. Okay,
understandably.
But...
That'll make sense in the second movie. As you were.
But... Like, how much does she know? We don't really know how much she knows. Like, she might know he's a serial killer.
Yeah.
She might just...
or know that he's mentally unstable.
Yeah, she might just know that he's
Because she
a creep.
she didn't seem to think that it was she thought he was probably in danger, but she didn't really know how much danger he was in. But
She sounded pretty concerned. She was like,
just
like,
get out.
You need to get out right now.
I don't have my keys. I'll come get you. But what was weird about that situation, now that I think about it, is that she called him Joseph when she called her brother, and Aaron picked up and she thought it was him, and she's like, Joseph. It's like, no, I'm Aaron, which is weird when you think about it, because at the end of the movie, Joseph's up to his old shenanigans, and he responds to another call from a similar Craigslist ad, and he introduces himself, I think as Bill,
Okay.
if I remember correctly, something like that. For some reason, he wasn't lying about his name.
You think his actual name was? Oh, okay, yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
otherwise-
Why? Otherwise, why would his sister call him?
Yeah, why would his
sister
sister
would of course call him by his actual name?
Yeah.
So he was. Huh.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
almost feel like
thought
there was a intended plot thread in the sequel with the sister that they decided to scrap.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, there's a third movie that's actually been planned.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, maybe that's when they're bringing the sister in.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, I'm not ready to say that that's a continuity error. Maybe just hadn't quite fully realized the sequel yet, or even knew if they were going to make a sequel.
Right.
So sometimes he does use his real name.
Right.
Why not? At
Sure.
this point, why not? After 39 murders, yeah, you're kind of trying to come up with male names. It's got to be hard to keep all that straight. Well, then again, he hadn't committed 39 murders at that point. I didn't count the VHS tapes. Oh, that was a great scene when right. Why I'm a little reluctant to call this a true found footage film is because all of the films are kept under lock and key by Joseph. So maybe they're found considerably later. Maybe they'll be found at the end of the third movie.
Yeah.
Unless they want to just keep making these movies, which I'm not complaining. These are good movies. But what was I saying about? Oh yeah, that scene where Joseph shows all of his tapes of people that he's killed. The majority are VHS tapes. There's 2 or 3 8mm tapes, and there's about 6 or 7 DVDs.
Yeah.
So he has been doing this for a long time. He's been doing this since at least the 70s or 80s. I just thought that was really cool. It really demonstrated how long he's truly been doing this.
Yeah, it's just like each one has like the name of the person and like just like a few other things on it, just like to label them. It's like all these names, right? It's like like this is this DVD and this DVD and this is just going right in the collection,
Yeah.
This is part of his thing of like absorbing. Oh no, I keep wanting to get into stuff that the second movie talks about, but yeah, he's just got his collection. Which
and he draw in the DVD for Aaron. He draws a big heart on.
I missed that.
You didn't see that? Yeah, that was it had a heart on it, and none of the other ones had a heart.
Favorite.
You were my favorite, and you always will be.
Oh God, his best friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Aaron wants no part of it, but arguably Aaron is Joseph's best friend.
Oh yeah, from his
perspective,
yeah.
It's interesting that Joseph admires Aaron so much, but at the same time,
who's so different than him.
Yeah, but at the same time, the traits that Joseph admires in Aaron are ultimately the traits that allow Joseph to easily kill him. But he doesn't necessarily admire him for his vulnerability. He admires him for these positive traits that he exemplifies.
Because
despite, which is interesting for a serial killer narrative, because you'd think that they'd think, oh, these traits make you weak. Of course, I killed you. Why would I think about it anymore? But those same traits allowed him allowed him to kill Aaron, but he greatly admires those traits. Almost contradictory.
You're a good person. I'm a bad person, and like you being a good person makes you vulnerable to me, but you're still a good person.
Exactly.
And like I'm not, and like that means that you have something that's special.
And that's why I love you.
I think right.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, he and Joseph, like there's the part where he takes him to the healing springs, and it's like in the shape of a heart in the rock.
Oh yeah.
He's so kind of like goofy in those ways, you know, and like he kind of he's just like such a cornball. That's like what make again interesting for a serial killer to be kind of like that, to be almost like this weird eccentric hipster kind of guy, you know, like the kind of guy who eats hummus and like makes like protein smoothies and stuff like that.
Yeah. It does kind of make sense though. I mean, I'm don't know that much about sociopaths, but from my understanding, generally they take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Which does make sense with that kind of person, that kind of self-absorbed.
Yeah.
Unable to understand the feelings of others. Of course, you take care of yourself.
Yeah, he's just living in his own little world. He's kind of pretty isolated existence, probably. You know.
Yeah.
Like
kind of like American Psycho. The first 10 minutes of that movie are dedicated to how he takes care of himself. Oh, something else I really liked in this movie were the sequences where Aaron talks about the strange dreams he's had.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, the wolf dreams.
Right, and he's got the baby wolf mask on.
Yeah.
And Joseph has the peach fuzz mask.
Yeah.
So it's like he's worried that like what Joseph said was true, maybe, that like he's got like a wolf in him, that he's got like a I don't know. I don't know exactly how to analyze it.
Probably every human being has that in them.
Right.
To an extent.
Definitely.
So
is that what he's like feeling afraid about? Is that what he's feeling?
Maybe.
I don't know. But
what was weird, or I thought they were almost going to take a little bit of a magic realism road when Joseph, one of the final gifts Joseph sends Aaron, involves it's 3 items. It's a knife, a baby wolf toy or plushie, and a locket inside of the baby wolf, and he's encouraged to use the knife to cut the locket, the heart-shaped locket, out of the wolf, even though that ends up not being what he does. He can't even bring himself to do that. He just opens the seam that Joseph clearly cut.
Right, so the baby wolf mask showing up after...
Well, the baby wolf toy showing up after he's had...
a dream about it.
Or 2 dreams about wearing a baby wolf mask in the healing springs with Joseph. I thought, okay, this is gonna be a little bit of magic realism.
It does feel a little bit supernatural almost. You know, like a premonition kind of a thing. Like something like that. Okay, so wrapping up Creep. This is a really good example of the whatever you want to call it. Found footage is the term that is like, you know, it's technically not, but it's in that kind of mock doc, whatever, you know, and it's a really good example of that genre. It's like it's just an example of what you can do with so little and make something that's so creepy just because it's based on creepy human behavior, and that's all you need, you know? Like just those little it's because of how kind of like well observed it is, and those little details, the performances. That's one thing that we haven't talked about. I mean, I think Mark Duplass is really good in this movie.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. He's
Mark Duplass makes these movies.
Oh.
They are his movies.
Yeah, and he really grounds them, like his performance. It grounds the movie, and he's just so creepy. There's so many good details of his performance. Yeah, it's a good movie. Okay, so
at a certain point, only thing you can do is name your movie Creep, because it's the only name that works, because that movie is so freaking creepy.
Amen. All right, so signing out. This is A Bit of the Dark. I'm Neil.
I'm Joey.
Good night.
Don't sleep. You won't.